Welcome to The Explainer. In combat sports, losing usually means a bruised ego, maybe a drop in the rankings. But what if defeat meant something else? What if it meant public humiliation for you and a prison sentence for your family? Well, today we're diving into a brutal new spectacle that does just that. It's called Naked Reckoning.
And that quote right there, from the league's founder Jax Harlan, really gets to the core of it. Truth in the nude? I mean, that's not just a catchy tagline. It's the whole philosophy. It's about a kind of raw, brutal exposure that is the foundation for this entire sport. So here's the premise, and it is absolutely wild. If you win, you walk away with a cool $500,000. But if you lose, well, the consequences are just devastating. We're talking public nudity, being pelted with garbage, and a punishment that literally spills over to your entire family.
So you have to be asking, how did a spectacle this extreme even come to be? How does something like this crawl out of the shadows and end up under the bright lights of Las Vegas?
Well, its rise was just astonishingly fast. I mean, think about it. Just a couple of years ago, this thing started as reckoning riots in the back alleys of Manila. Then it explodes on bootleg streaming channels. And somehow, in just 2 years, promoters get the legal waivers to bring it to a massive sanctioned event in Vegas. Incredible.
And the motivation behind all this? It's cold, hard business. The promoters are billing it as evolutionary entertainment, which is really just a fancy way of saying they're making an aggressive play to grab viewers who they think are getting bored with mainstream sports like the UFC.
So what are the actual rules inside that 40-foot arena? Let's take a look at how they've created this completely unique and uniquely punishing style of combat. Okay, this side-by-side really shows you just how radical this is compared to traditional MMA. No gloves. Instead of a thick rulebook, you've got one main rule: no mutilations. Scoring isn't based on points. It's based on something they call visceral vulnerability. And the stakes, well, they aren't even on the same planet.
And here's a stat that's going to make you scratch your head. Early data suggests the physical injury rate is actually lower than in traditional MMA. But that number is so misleading, because the damage in this sport, it's not measured in broken bones.
And that no mutilations rule is the key to all of this. See, by banning the stuff that causes permanent physical harm, the sport deliberately shifts the damage away from the body and puts it squarely onto the loser's mind, their psyche, their social standing. And that's where the real reckoning begins. In this sport, a loss isn't just a mark on your record. No, it's the start of a highly ritualized punishment, one that's designed to be both incredibly public and deeply private.
So part one of the punishment is called the Parade of Perdition. And it's not some spontaneous thing, it's an organized, monetized spectacle of humiliation. The loser is stripped bare, forced to walk 2 miles down the Vegas Strip, and gets pelted with trash, all for a live streaming audience.
And the public's reaction is a huge part of this whole thing. Get this, the first loser is hit with almost 50 pounds of kale. That one act sparked a viral TikTok trend. And maybe the most chilling part? A USC poll found that a majority of viewers actually approved of this, calling it deterrent discipline.
But the punishment doesn't stop on the street. It extends directly to the loser's family. For 1 full year, their spouse, their parents, their adult children, they're locked up in these facilities with the ominous name reflection retreats.
So how is this even legal, right? Well, the official justification from the Nevada State Athletic Commission calls it contractual kinship. Basically, the family co-signs the waivers. They agree ahead of time to share in either the glory of a win or the sacrifice of a loss.
So as you can imagine, this brings us to the massive ethical firestorm around the sport. It's a debate that pits its supporters, who point to physical data, against its critics, who are horrified by the psychological damage.
On one side of the argument, you've got proponents pointing to this wild data from the Mayo Clinic. They measured this insane adrenaline spike in losers right before the parade, a spike that some researchers are actually claiming could act as an ultimate nootropic that speeds up neural recovery.
But the psychological cost looks absolutely devastating. A new study is projecting that 1 in every 3 of these fighters, they call them the unveiled, will suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. A 33% PTSD rate. That's staggering.
And that brings us to ethicists like Dr. Flush from Harvard, who argue this isn't even a sport.
He calls it societal scalping and says the whole point of the show is to inflict this deep, lasting psychological wound through what he calls ritualized rejection.
And behind this whole ethical mess, of course, there is a rapidly growing and incredibly profitable business model. This isn't just about the spectacle, it's about the money.
And these numbers show that this is far from some fringe event. It launched with $47 million in funding. It's projecting massive revenues, and it's actually driving tourism to Vegas. They're even selling VIP parade passes for $250 a pop, so people can pay for a prime spot to throw trash.
And this isn't just staying in Vegas. The business model is already being prepped for a global rollout. Leagues like Nude Nose in Tokyo and Samba Shame in Sao Paulo are in the works. This could become a really disturbing global trend.
Ultimately, the insane rise of this sport forces all of us to ask some really tough questions, not just about the fighters, but about what we find entertaining and where, or if, we draw a line.
And that's really the central question this whole phenomenon leaves us with. When the scars from a spectacle aren't on the body, but deep in the soul, what does it say about those of us who tune in to watch?